Hi everybody, this is Mike Jensen. I want to show you how to make a really cool image out of just some ho-hum shots, and I think almost every photographer goes through this. You go out on a shoot, you get some cool shots, and you're like, oh, that's a really cool shot, but there's no background, or there's no foreground, or what have you. So I have created an image using a nice foreground and a real stormy background. I've added some rain. So we've got a variety of different types of things to do in this image, and the first thing we're going to do is merge these as an HDR image in Lightroom. So I've selected my 3 images. I'm going to right click and go into Lightroom and click on HDR, merge HDR, and Lightroom takes a look at them. And here's the preview of the results. So I'm going to click on merge, and Lightroom will merge those in the background. Okay, so here is the image that Lightroom created. It's an image of an old schoolhouse out on the Kansas prairie. And what I'd like to do is do something with this background, kind of a blah background, and really turn it into a real dramatic type of an image. The first thing I want to do before I take this into Photoshop is to just check the distortion, any distortion there might be, things like that. So I'm just going to scroll down to the transform tool in Lightroom and click on auto. I found that that's a really good way to make my adjustments. There it is, it looks good. So now I right click, click edit, and go into Photoshop. Okay, so now we're in Photoshop, and the first thing we want to do is mask out the sky. So we're going to just make a selection of the sky. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's see how the Select Subject tool works in Photoshop. I'm going to click on Select Subject. I can do that after I click on the Quick Selection tool or on the Magic Wand tool. And actually it did a pretty good job, so we can probably just add to this selection by using the Quick Select tool. Alright, very nice. I'm going to go into the Select and Mask tool, and remember that everything that is in red is not selected, so we just have to remember that as we're working in our image. I'm going to take the second tool down, which is the Refine Edge brush tool, and just do a little cleanup on this background here. Everything else looks pretty good. When I want to export it out, I click on New Layer with Layer Mask. And look at this. Okay, so when I come out of the Select and Mask tool, I've got my foreground. Okay, so here's my background. I'm going to open that up. And the first thing I'm going to do is just go into image rotation and flip it, because I know that I want the lightning on the one side. The next thing I can do then is I can just drag it over into the image that I'm working on. I can drag it right in here, and then hit Command T for transform, resize a little bit. There we go. That's looking good. And I'm actually going to put this underneath the house as a layer, and then raise it up a little bit. And it looks like it fits really good right about there. So now I'm going to turn off my foreground, and I'm going to do a little bit of work on the background. I'm going to create a smart object, convert it to a smart object, and then I'm going to click on Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And this is Adobe Camera Raw, folks. This is the same as the Develop module in Lightroom, and here's what it looks like. So what we're going to do, we need to bring up the exposure a little bit. I'm going to bring it up, about a stop and a quarter, something like that. Right about there. I want the contrast up just a little bit. Maybe about 33, 34. I'm going to bring the highlights down all the way because I really want some nice drama. That's almost right there. Shadows, let's pull those up just a little bit. And the blacks, we're going to take up all the way because that will give me much more definition out of my blacks. And now I can bring down my highlights a little bit, just about like that. So when I click OK, remember it's a smart object, so I can go back in and make some adjustments if I want to just by clicking on that camera raw filter there. So now we're starting to blend a lot better in Photoshop. Okay, now I really don't want it purple, so I'm going to add a hue and saturation layer, and I'm just going to change the color of the blue down to like about there, something like that. That's a lot more blue. Now I bring in the foreground, and it's starting to look really cool, really dramatic. One thing I noticed is that I need to take care of some of the grass in the back area here because it looks just a little bit lighter. So I'm going to add another blank layer, and you can rename it Clone Grass. And I just grab my clone tool and do a little bit of painting here. If I want to, I can lower the opacity a little bit. It just blends in a little bit better there. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is make a curves adjustment, and I only really want it to affect the green channel, so I'm just going to darken this down on the green channel a little bit, not too far. Okay, so now I'm going to use a little trick. I'm going to hit Command or Control on your PC, click, and I've got this area selected right here. I'm going to make a curves adjustment just on the green channel of the foreground. And you can see it made an adjustment on the house as well, so we can just kind of paint that back in. That's no big deal. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is darken the foreground. So I click Command or Control on your PC, and I just need a copy of this. And I just need a copy of this mask, the selection, and I can add my curves layer. So I'm just going to go up here, grab curves, drag it down a little bit. Okay, so that's helping. But I really need to just kind of take care of the green a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing with a hue and saturation layer. On the green channel and just pull it down a little bit. Okay, just something like that. And then we'll do a little bit to clean up these edges in the background. Okay, so now you can see our image is getting pretty big. It's 873 megabytes. So we're going to save it as a PSB file, which is a large document file. Okay, so now it's time to make the rain. I'm going to create a new document, and I'm going to create a pretty large document here, 8,000 by 6,000, because that's the project I'm currently working on. I'm going to fill the document with black. Click Edit, Fill, and then Black. And then I'm going to click Filter, Noise, and Add Noise. And also make sure that your foreground and background colors are black and white. Here's our noise. You can change that any way you want to. You know, there's a lot there. There's probably too much there. I'm going to go down to like 25. Make sure the Gaussian radio button is turned on and monochromatic is turned on. Okay, so guess what? That's our rain, and it's really hard to see right now, but we're going to do a few other things to fix it. If you hit Command-T or Control-T on your keyboard and go up to the dimensions, and we're going to set the horizontal scale to 450. If this little chain is connected, the height should be 450 as well. Then you just click the check box, or you can press Enter. And it will transform, and guess what? Our rain looks a lot larger now. Okay, so that's cool. Next thing we're going to do is click from normal blending mode down to screen. And those of you who work in Photoshop a lot know that screen blending mode will make the black go away when you place another image underneath it. The next thing we're going to do is click on Filter, Blur, and Motion Blur. Now at this point I might also normally convert this to a smart object so that I can modify this, but at this size of a document it just plain doesn't make sense to do that right now. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to leave the angle at about 65 and the distance at 75 pixels. I'm going to click OK and just let this turn and burn for a moment. Okay, so we've got our rain. That's our final product. Okay, we're back and we have imported the rain into the document. Here it is. And I have to change the blending mode again because what I did was I dragged a PSB file into my regular document. So I have to go down here and click on screen. And then the next thing I have to do is just make a levels adjustment on the rain. So I'm going to click on adjustment layer, click on levels. Now to make sure it doesn't affect the entire document, I'm going to hold down my Option or my Alt key and just click right here in between them, and that will clip to the layer right below it. You can also get there by clicking on, right-clicking on it, and it'll say Create Clipping Mask. Okay, so here's our levels adjustment, and we're just going to adjust it a little bit, right about there, I think. Okay, so now it's really just boils down to making sure that you clean up all the edges, making sure that all the tonal values are blended together. So I'm going to add a blank layer. I'm going to convert it to soft light. I'm going to grab a paintbrush and probably lower the opacity down to around 50%. We'll start with that. And I'm just going to kind of paint the grass down a little bit, and I'm going to paint the house down a little bit more, just so it kind of blends in with the idea of being in a storm, things like that. And then I think I'm probably going to want to make a few minor adjustments on the blend down here. Got to make sure I have a really, really soft brush. That works good. And I'm just making a real soft adjustment there on the brush. Let's get that up there. Same thing over here. Okay, so this is our final image. It ends up looking like this when I've placed it onto a white mat and then a darker blue mat that I took the eyedropper from right around this area and just created that blue mat from it. So, hope you enjoyed this. Hope it works for you. Give it a try with some of your images. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.